Train to Busan.
Train to Busan, and why?
Because I'm sick and tired of zombie movies.
Okay, yeah. Korea did have a phase where they were they really latched on. I mean, America too. Like with Walking Dead.
Train to Busan was the first Korean attempt to make zombie movies, I think. So I give them credit for that, but
definitely probably the entry level one. But the success of that just led to zombie movie after zombie movie after zombie movie. Hello everyone and welcome back to Day at the Han. My name is Hunter, I'm your host, and today I am joined by my former internship boss, Danny Kim. He is the CEO and director at Docu, a production company that creates numerous types of documentaries focused on social impact issues. Today we are going to talk to him about his journey of becoming a filmmaker, how he learned his skills, and how he's applying them to issues right here in South Korea. Of course, here at the river, the Hangang, with our Hanjans.
Hanjan.
Cheers to the interview.
Sponsored by Stella Artois.
Yes, if you want to give us money, please. Absolutely. There is something about having a beer at the river that is just so relaxing.
Where's chicken?
The what? Yeah, we need chicken also. For those who aren't familiar with super Korean culture, there's this terminology called chimek. That's like chicken and beer. Koreans are obsessed with making words really short. It's like chicken이랑 맥주, and they just short it. They're like chimek. Easy to say. I've learned so much 줄임말 since I came to Korea.
What else do you know?
You know 엽기 떡볶이?
Yeah, 엽떡.
Yeah, so I am here this week with my former internship boss. I never know what to call you in Korean. People always ask me, are you a 사장님 or are you a 대표님?
Good question. Just call me 감독님.
감독님? For director?
Yeah.
In my position as an intern, what would I, if we were a super Korean company, how would I have referred to you?
Technically, you're supposed to address me as 대표님.
대표님?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So then I can go on the record saying that I had a 대표님 on my show. Perfect, awesome. So Danny here, he is a director, a philanthropist, a researcher.
I'm a philanthropist.
You gave me a job. That's pretty philanthropy, if you ask me.
Actually, it's one of my dreams to become a philanthropist. So thank you for giving me the title ahead of my game.
Well, you're doing a great job of it, especially the kind of content that you're creating. We'll go into that a little bit. But just to start out, maybe you can tell us a little bit, your company, Docu+, what's going on over there? What do you guys do?
Yeah, so I founded back in 2021 during the height of the pandemic. I wanted to create a company that kind of focuses on creating socially impact-driven films, including documentaries, narrative, and branded content. So in order to test that, I started my inaugural pilot project called Zero Waste, which was a feature documentary plastic waste pollution crisis here in South Korea. Luckily, the film kind of did well for a new emerging filmmaker type of film. I had a successful world premiere at the LA Asian Pacific Film Festival last year, followed by Seoul International Eco Film Festival, and then EBS International Documentary Film Festival. And then later that year, I went to Italy for the first time, and at this small environmental film festival called Terra Viva, and they actually awarded me with the Green Award. So with one film, I was able to go around the world and win 2 awards at the same time. So it was pretty significant achievement for me. Yeah,
that's awesome. Before you got into documentary filmmaking, though, what was your I already know a little bit about you, so I have kind of the background knowledge, but you actually studied in America, right? Where were you studying at?
All over the place. I went to high school in New York. After high school, I went to college in Wisconsin, University of Wisconsin-Madison. It's there I studied film. Our official title was Communication Arts, Radio, TV, Film. After that, I moved to LA to do some internships in Hollywood, like every film major.
So then you came back to Korea after your master's, right? Yep. And did you ever do any kind of education courses on film in Korea, or was it a situation where you took everything you learned in America and tried to bring it into the Korean cinema space?
It's actually, my story is kind of unique because I actually came back to Korea after college. And then I did my military service for 2 years. And after that, I worked here for 5 years. And then I went back to grad school. And all the stuff that I learned in the US, I did get a lot of inspirations because back in mid 2010s, that's when at least in the US, the documentary scene was exploding. There was a lot of award-winning film, documentary films coming out from the US,
March of the Penguins,
and
Planet
all
Earth.
And what else did I watch back then? Citizen 4. It's like a Edward Snowden documentary.
Oh, yeah.
yeah. Um, so there's a lot of like. So I got to experience. Oh wow! Actually, people in the U.S. are making documentaries really fascinating because in Korea, documentaries tend to be stereotypically known as like a typical broadcast, like KBS, EBS, kind of like boring, informational, not
Like a PBS kind
yeah,
of thing in
yeah.
America.
But in the U.S., I saw a lot of interesting like projects coming out. So I thought, okay, now that I'm back in the Korea, I kind of wanted to mimic that environment because we don't have that here. That was kind of like my inception of starting DocuPlus, to try to bring in those type of projects to Korea. And over the years, I was successful in like bridging between Korea and the U.S. because I do still have a lot of network in California and New York. So those people tend to like hit me up whenever they have some needs in Korea.
Right. So when I joined DocuPlus at first as an intern, the key thing that I was learning about was what you were creating called impact documentaries. And that's kind of where your focus on DocuPlus has been. Impact documentaries, maybe you can give a quick explanation on what that is to the viewers that might not know.
Yeah, it's actually something that's been going around in the U.S. back, like I mentioned, back in like 2000, like mid 2010s. I saw a lot of socially impact-driven stories made in documentary forms, and what they do well with that is it's not like you just make a film and you show it in theaters and that's it. They bring all the cast and crew to whenever they have screening events, and they hold like this dialogue with the audience, and they have this really distinct use of like social media, like using hashtags to have the audience to participate almost to the film discourse. So I thought, because documentaries tend to be very like mission driven and passion driven, impact campaign did make sense. And because a lot of Korean documentaries don't have that sort of like campaign yet, I thought maybe with DocuPlus I can also kind of like start doing it. But now I'm seeing more Korean documentaries having that sort of like impact campaign as well. So it's slowly changing, not as fast as I wanted to, but yeah.
Your first impact documentary was Zero Waste, which focused on kind of the trash problem in Korea. And then your next one that's coming out is August Again, right? It's about the nuclear dysphoria that affects Koreans that were in Japan. Is that right?
Yep. During the World War II, like Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombings.
We'll go into more. I want to talk to you more about like what each of those films kind of represents and what's behind that. But those are just some examples of how like you talk about impact documentaries. It's very environmentally focused, very culture issue focused. You see a lot of those kind of things. So what really brought you towards that kind of filmmaking rather than looking at something like a crime documentary, which are insanely popular these days? What made you think, oh, I want to focus more on like an environmental message rather than just what's popular?
Good question. Don't get me wrong, I do enjoy watching those like true crime, sports, music documentaries because they are really entertaining to watch. But those tend to take much like higher. It's a higher budget film, and you need to work with like almost like celebrities even. So it takes a lot of effort and energy. And I feel like, to me, let's say if I'm making a film for like BTS or Blackpink, in my mind, they're already famous enough. Like, I don't have to like make a film about them to give more publicity because they're already famous on their own right. So I'd rather focus my energy and effort into telling stories that are often like neglected or often unheard of. It doesn't mean I'm only interested in like marginalized communities. I do look at topics pretty broadly. Environment is, I think, I want to keep that IP because it's really relevant. Even today it's freaking hot as hell.
Yeah.
So climate change is real.
So then circling back to how this kind of brings it into Korea, the skills that you learned in America and your kind of filmmaking techniques that you developed while you were there, do you think it translates pretty well to the Korean system, or is there a huge difference in the systems between Korean cinema and American cinema?
Oh, that's a really good question. there is a huge difference. Obviously, film was born not in Korea, but like in the Western culture. So Europe and the US has a longer history of cinema. And because I studied in the US and I also studied abroad in Europe for one semester, um, so I do notice the difference between like the film industry in the US and Korea. But that doesn't mean like one is bad or like one is better. I just think that because I was educated in the US, I do have this like maybe I'm kind of like I have this notion that filmmaking should fit into this certain style. Whereas nowadays, like I feel like Korean cinema is catching so much global attention compared to when I was like studying in the US. So I feel like even for the world of cinema, there's no borders anymore. If the story is good enough, people will watch it, no matter where it's made from. Yeah.
Talking more about the content that you've released, you've currently released your first feature film in Zero Waste, and you're currently working on your second one. Starting with Zero Waste, can you tell us a little bit about the idea behind the movie and how you came to wanting to create something about that?
So back in 2021, I started the idea because it was during the height of the pandemic, and I just noticed in my office after 1 week, like the amount of plastic that I consume over a week kind of like exponentially grew. Because even in Korea did a phenomenal job at the beginning, we still had some sort of like social distancing measurement. So that's when I started ordering a lot from like delivery service such as like Yogiyo and Coupang Eats. So I was thinking to myself, if me as an individual consume so much plastic like this, Korea is about 52 million people. Like if you do the math, like where does all these like excess plastic wrappings and excess plastic ends up? Because our land mass is not unlimited. We're so much smaller than like the U.S. or China. So that kind of sparked my curiosity, and I was doing some research. I found out that a lot of our garbage are actually ending up in our oceans too, which was quite shocking.
And so when you decided that this was an issue you wanted to address, how did you go about starting the planning process for your documentary of like, how did you choose which angle you wanted to look at the problem from, who you wanted to interview? What's your kind of process on that?
When I was doing my research, I first wanted to look at like compelling characters, because I was trying to move away from like a newsy type of event-based documentaries. So what I did was, at the time, like because everybody was on social media, I just went to like Instagram, Twitter, and used hashtags like Zero Waste, and look up who's in Korea that's kind of like compelling enough, and preferably young, like millennials and Gen Zers, because I want to address how these younger generations are doing their job to address these issues that the older generations are not, or who the older generation created the problem, and the younger like millennials and Gen Zers are like inheriting and tackling the issue too. So with that, I found a couple characters and I just DM'd them directly. Hey, I'm a documentary filmmaker based in Korea. I'm interested in working, producing this film called Zero Waste. Would you be kindly enough to like be in the film? And surprisingly, a lot of those people, when I asked them privately on DM, they said yes. So it was a pretty high success rate. And out of the candidates, I chose like 4 or 5 compelling characters, and we started filming. Yeah.
So what's the current situation on your film right now? I know it's been to a couple of film festivals. You mentioned at the beginning that it's won some awards. Are you looking to kind of globalize it, send it out on some streaming services? What's your current plan with it?
Yeah. Good question. We just signed a contract with 2 distribution companies in Korea and also in the US. So as of next month, we will have wider release on VOD, SVOD, OTT in Korea, and also in North America and South America, like Latin America. So it's gonna go global.
Congratulations.
Yeah, but it's just that I actually wanted to have a limited theatrical release before that, but it wasn't successful. So I was kind of a little bit down. But then this other 2 opportunities came about. So I think overall, for my first feature film, I'm pretty happy where it's been going.
Yeah, I mean, most people's first feature films don't even make it there.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
And so now that you've kind of, I guess, are in the final steps of distribution for that film, you started working on your next feature film. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so next feature film is also kind of touching upon environmental issue and human interest story. I recently came across with this community in Korea who were affected by the Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombings, and at the time I was kind of ignorant because I didn't know like the atomic bombing survivors were also like atomic bomb also affected Koreans because I thought it was more like a Japanese issue. But it kind of all makes sense because during that time Korea was under Japanese occupation, so there were a lot of like forced laborers and people who also freely chose to go to Japan for better opportunities. So I learned that there were about 10% of Koreans affected by the bombings during the war, and a lot of them re-migrated back to Korea and settled down in this community called Hapcheon. It's near Daegu, south of South Korea. So I've been following their community since like last year, 2023. We slowly began production last week, but prior to that, we did some test shooting and scouting and things like that in spring. And we are also actively fundraising at this time. We set up an Indiegogo campaign in the U.S. and although the rate is not as what I want it to be, but it's a good start.
Right.
And we just successfully applied to this fiscal sponsorship in the U.S. with the International Documentary Association (IDA). With their approval, we will have like a nonprofit status, and people who donate to our project can write off their tax.
That's awesome.
By end of the year. So hopefully with that approval, we'll have a better rate at fundraising. So we're kind of, it's kind of icky because we started production, but we didn't fundraise 100%, but we're just pushing, we're just spearheading through and see what's going to happen. Yeah.
So if you're interested in learning more about August Again, and maybe if you have the means and you want to help support telling the story of people who've been affected, and the big thing that from my understanding is that they're not really getting a lot of assistance from other places. From government?
No, because the Korean government or Japanese or the U.S. doesn't recognize the second and third generation A-bomb survivors.
Basically, people who are kids of the children of the people who were affected from radiation, who also suffer from problems.
And it's a generational thing because all the second and third generation, they suffer from all these like Down syndrome, all these like heart disease, like mental health issues, and all sorts of diseases.
I think that's a key point you just mentioned also, that governments aren't really helping them a lot, especially even the Korean government. And that brings me to my next point. When it comes to creating documentaries and stories about cultural issues or environmental issues, in some ways you do have to criticize the government itself in a lot of these situations. And Koreans can be touchy, I guess, when it comes to anything that's critiquing of Korea. And certain groups can be very touchy about criticizing the government. When you are creating these documentaries that have this big focus on systematic issues, how do you kind of toe the line between trying to make change and also not trying to offend people or kind of cross the line that people might have set?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And a lot of journalists in Korea, especially the foreign journalists, suffer from this because we have this thing called defamation law, where if you write a story critiquing, let's say, a conglomerate or some kind of like government official, you can actually get sued for it. So it's always difficult. And as an independent documentary filmmaker myself, I have to really be mindful of that because I don't have any protection from a big media organization backing. So when I was making Zero Waste, I was kind of conscious of that. And the point, all the films that I make, of course, it's gonna be socially driven, and there's gonna be some kind of like critique of like the government policy. But my main interest is not like criticizing, like pointing fingers at like someone. Rather, I want to tell a story through like I want to like humanize a story in a way that it may be a common story that you and I are familiar with day to day, especially like plastic pollution issues. You get it on the news every day. But the way I'm trying to craft the story is to humanize it. So by watching my documentary, you can kind of relate it to your heart. But my next film, a lot of people were kind of like skeptical when I first talked about this project, because they're like, are you anti-US? Are you anti-Korea? Are you like pro-Japan? I'm like, no, I'm trying to step aside from all those like complicated history and politics. But of course, because the topic of itself, because it's dealing with Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombing, I do have to do a thorough research on like all these like history and like background. But my film is not going to be like a History Channel documentary per se. So hopefully when the film is finished, I will try to have a screening in both the National Assembly in Korea and the Congress in Japan, or whatever they call it in Japan.
Right.
And I'm kind of curious how the politicians in both countries respond to my film. Yeah.
What's the ideal outcome?
The ideal outcome is that my subjects, my community that I'm following, they get justice. And hopefully, on top of that, with this film, it's also kind of served as an archival purpose, because they're all aging out too.
Right.
A lot of the first generations are in their 80s, so a lot of them are dying out of natural causes.
Right.
So hopefully, if I do this right, it's a story that will pass down to generations to come, and it's going to be a legacy that they can kind of like hold on to.
Hopefully August again gets up there with some of the big Korean films that everyone knows and loves. Speaking of Korean films that everyone knows and loves, we're going to transition. I have a little game for you.
Okay.
Are you've watched a lot of films, I guess. It's probably your job. You probably allocate some time in your day to watching films. Am I right?
I do. I watch everything.
So, do you think you have more of a bias towards Western films or Korean films?
I don't know. I don't actually look at the country per se. I just look at the story more itself. So.
Right. Do you have a favorite film?
Oh, that's a hard question.
We're going to tackle this 2 movies. I want you to pick which one. If you had to take one and destroy it forever, the memory is gone. It is no longer included in cinema.
Uh-huh.
And you can keep the other one.
Okay.
Which one would you keep?
Okay.
Round 1 here. We have The Handmaiden and Old Boy.
Handmaiden.
Why?
It was too graphic for me. Like, I didn't like the way Park Chan-wook took it towards the end. It kind of had this like men's like voyeurism almost towards like these 2 female love interests.
So you're saying kill that movie.
Yeah,
Kill The Handmaiden.
Yeah.
Keep the Old Boy.
Yep.
Why would you keep Old Boy?
It's a classic. It's a cult classic. The topic is kind of like ew. It's like kind of gross.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like that.
I was very confused watching it the first time because I didn't have English subtitles the first time I watched it. And the first like half of the film is pretty easy to understand if you don't have subtitles, because there's not a lot of dialogue.
Yeah.
But you get about to the halfway point when, no spoilers, a certain character appears in an apartment, if you know what the scene I'm talking about. They start having a very long dialogue scene, and I just, at that moment, I was like, I have no clue what's happening in this movie anymore. But it was interesting. It was good. It's an older movie.
And there's a famous one-take scene where he's like fighting across like this, like all these like crazy gangsters. Yeah.
Yeah, crazy. Awesome fight scene.
Yeah.
Amazing. Okay, so round 2. The Host and Train to Busan.
That's a tough one. Train to Busan.
Train to Busan, and why?
Because I'm sick and tired of zombie movies.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, Korea did have a phase where they were they really latched on. I mean, America too, like
although
Walking Dead.
Although Train to Busan was the first Korean attempt to make zombie movies, I think. So I give them credit for that, but
definitely probably the entry level one. But the success of that just led to zombie movie after zombie movie after zombie movie. And the main actor in that, he's actually the guy from a lot of people might recognize him from Squid Game.
Yeah, he's popular.
Yeah, he's very
famous,
popular. The next round, the Battle of Bong Joon-ho. Parasite versus Memories of a Murderer.
Oh, damn, that's another hard one.
Parasite, of course, is the one that I feel like most Westerners are gonna know, most foreigners are gonna know, because it won all the awards. Mm-hmm. It won an Oscar, right?
Yep.
Yeah. It won an Oscar. It's just kind of the pioneer for Korean cinema abroad, I feel like, in a way. It's hard to say you want to kill that one.
But if I have to kill it, I'll kill Parasite, because Memory of Murder is what made Bong Joon-ho who he is. Because that film is classic Korean cinema film.
What people might not know if you're not into Korean cinema, Bong Joon-ho, he's kind of famous in the same way. There's another director in America that has the same kind of point, is that he reuses a lot of the same actors in his films. There's Song
Kang-ho.
Kang-ho. Yeah, I love him.
Yeah,
He's
yeah.
great. He's like, he just radiates dad energy in a way. I really, really like him. But he's actually one of the main characters in both of these movies.
Yeah, he's also in The Host.
Oh, is he? Oh, yeah, he is also the host. Yeah. So you would kill Parasite then?
Sure.
That's Oscar winner, man.
Yeah, but Memories of Murder made him where he is. Without that, there won't be Bong Joon-ho.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a fair point. Okay, and the last round. And this one is, I feel like, hard for me because these are two movies that I absolutely love. Mother and Joint Security Area, JSA.
Oh, but that's Park Chan-wook though.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's the team kill. The team kill round. This is hard. I actually just recently saw JSA for the first time, maybe about a few months ago. And, oh my gosh, it's so good. I feel like there's a lot of like, there was nothing that stuck out directly in my mind, but watching it, I was like, I feel like I've seen like references to this in other cinema as well, like very similar things in newer cinema, where I feel like, maybe it's a reference to this, and now I'm like,
I taught a class called Korean Cinema earlier this year to a bunch of like American students, like 22 of them, and we showed JSA, and we had this intense discussion and debate. They all seem to love the film.
Yeah.
So with that being said, I'm gonna keep JSA.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mother also, though, just to talk about it, also
It's a
film.
very amazing film. I love it.
I will say the first time I watched it, I actually turned it off after like 10 minutes because I was like, it's not that interesting.
It gets super interesting. Like there's that flip.
Yeah.
Which I think Bong Joon-ho is the mastermind of like the flip of genres. Like it suddenly like switches from like ordinary drama to like freaking horror film.
Yeah, absolutely. All great movies in their own right. Okay, yeah. Remember, JSA is like, it also kind of, it's easy to watch as a foreigner because you have a little bit of like, I want to say anchor, but that's not the word, foothold in the story.
Yeah.
Because you maybe have some previous knowledge of like the Korean War and stuff like that. As a foreigner, it was a little bit harder to watch Mother because there's some like cultural references and stuff that I might not pick up on or like connect with.
Although in class we talk about how the character of that Sophie, I don't know if you remember, it was kind of like a miscast because she's supposed to be like a adoptee who grew up in like Sweden or somewhere in Europe, but we can obviously tell she's like a Korean
in
with
JSA,
a thick accent.
Yeah.
So like, come on, I know Lee Young is like super famous, but Bong Joon-ho could have done a better job casting.
So wrapping up our time here, the last thing I kind of want to ask you kind of looks at the future of filmmaking, future of documentaries, because as someone who's very interested in how filmmaking is evolving, it's hard to not look at how technology is progressing and not imagine that in 10 years it's going to look very, very different with AI and the different types of media platforms. Like short content is very, very popular these days and is getting only more popular as people's attention spans shrink, and the need for new things is so quick, and how content that comes out fades away into obscurity very, very quickly for the next new thing. As you look forward into your next 10 years, next 20 years of filmmaking, do you think about these things? And if so, how do you plan to kind of adjust to those types of trends?
Yeah, of course. I always constantly think about it and read the news that's coming out, especially from Hollywood, because like Variety and Hollywood Reporter, they always talk about how AI is going to change the whole entire landscape. So what I've been doing at DocuPlus is I'm also slowly adapting to that change. So believe it or not, a lot of the projects that I work on, even to this day, I do keep AI as my assistant because it does give me a really thorough job of like outlining what my story is about. And based on that outline, I can just expand it further. So it kind of actually saves a lot of time. And especially for documentaries, AI is a super useful tool because when we do interviews, oftentimes it's like an hour or two long transcription that I have to do. But that saves time with AI, because with
Absolutely.
AI, it just do it in like 5 minutes.
Right.
Although it's not perfect yet, so I
Mm.
still have to go back and, do all these like small
Mm.
tweak, but it's better than starting from scratch.
Mm.
So it does save time. And I feel like in the next 10 years, the editing software is going to be all taken care of by AI.
Oh yeah.
So at least I think all the assistant editor jobs will go away, because AI can take over and the editor can like fine tune the final like touch.
Yeah, there's a big position as an assistant editor doing kind of the first cuts of a
Yeah.
lot of things.
Yeah.
If it's kind of pretty simple, it's usually kind of a mundane task of like searching through the footage, picking out the things that you want before sending it to kind of the main editor to really refine it. Absolutely. I've used programs that will take the cameras and you just tell the camera, okay, this one's this person talking, this one's this person. Even for this kind of content, I can just tell the program, hey, my speaking is this camera, your speaking is that camera. Switch the cameras whenever we're talking, and it just instantly, within minutes, will cut and edit. And of course, like you said, you got to kind of go back and check, because AI is definitely still very fallible, still makes mistakes. But yeah, it's become so helpful.
Plus translations, because I oftentimes work in both in like bilingual language like Korean and English. So having AI as my translator does help and save a lot of time.
Oh yeah.
No.
No more hiring people on Fiverr to.
No. So I feel like all those jobs will go away,
Oh,
sadly. But then I feel like those who harness the power of AI will manage to survive. So I have to like learn how to adapt to that new change.
Currently, the trend that I've seen is if you can figure out how to use AI to do those things, there's still so many people who are technologically illiterate at this point that you could basically make money just doing the AI, feeding things into AI for other people that don't know how to do it. Yeah. But as people start to figure it out, that'll definitely go away. As we wrap it up, is there anything else you want to share? Maybe you can shout out your links.
Yeah. So do follow us at Docu Plus. We are on all over like social media, like Instagram, YouTube channel.
Well, that wraps up our interview. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Danny, for coming on one more time.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, it was great. Yeah, so please, everyone, please go support Danny. Go check out Docu Plus. Go check out the Indiegogo. If you have the means, definitely help support. They are doing great messaging for great causes, especially here in Korea and abroad. Thank you one more time for coming on the show, and we'll see you guys next week. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.